Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our wrestling podcast. So, without further ado, the following podcast is scheduled for one fall, and today's topic, the legacy of Eric Bischoff.
Your opinion don't matter. This maniac is gonna step on whoever.
Welcome to the O.W.P. This is our wrestling podcast. This is Dave along with Jess.
Hello, David.
And Cuz.
I'm back!
Oh, my God.
Bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. And now on to our topic today, the legacy of Eric Bischoff. Guys, hold on. Just give me 1 second. As always, you can reach us via Instagram at OWP2019, SoundCloud at Our Wrestling Podcast, YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel, or just do the easy thing. Download WrestlePost at no charge to you and join us along with other great podcasts of the day. Hey, Cuz, Jess, why are we talking about Bischoff today? What's going on?
I'm back, and I'm better
In the unemployment line!
Well, I want to know when his new song's coming out. That's called I'm Gone,
Yeah,
Gone.
there you go.
And I'm moving back home now.
God.
3 months out.
Because he recently
already
got
fired. Oh, sorry.
Wow, Jesus. He recently got fired, and that's why we're talking about him. And it was a very quick exit, actually. A lot quicker than what people thought.
Well, was
A
it
lot faster
really
than Hogan
though?
lasted with Bubba the Love Sponge's wife.
Did
Right. And
did,
your
any,
campaign
did
is-
anybody think it was going to last as long as it did? I mean, can we be real about that? I mean,
No, I didn't think it was going to be this short.
No, I thought it was going to be longer, yeah.
I knew it wasn't.
I mean,
I knew
let's
it was
put
a
it this
bad
way.
hire, and it wasn't right from the beginning. But I mean, honestly, like,
yeah.
like I don't even know if we published it. It might have been one of the dark episodes that never made it or something like that, or maybe it did. But I specifically said that like he was just like he has not done anything since WCW, and we're going to cover that. And that's completely historic on its own. His accomplishments in WCW is Hall of Fame worthy on its own. But that's it. He's just been skating on that. Nothing he's done since then, even though his character, when he briefly came back as an on-screen character in WWE as Eric Bischoff, the general manager, that was very good. But I mean, he wasn't doing creative or he wasn't doing creative or producing back then. But everything that he's tried to venture into where he's played, like done the role like he did in WCW, TNA, absolute dumpster fire disaster. And this last venture here, just total ridiculousness. Like, yeah, it was all brutal. So, I mean, I just kind of fast forwarded through the end of the episode, and you can catch us on O.W.P.
No, hey, whoa. Watch your language. But anyway, I mean, the reason why we're talking about this is because Eric Bischoff has made several headlines over the past week. Obviously, just being brutally dismissed, not only replaced, but then dismissed for the likes of Bruce Pritchard, for the realm of SmackDown, right, Jess? I mean, is it Raw or SmackDown?
No, it was SmackDown.
It is SmackDown. So, we're talking about why. Whoa, how'd that happen? But I know, like, you can talk in hindsight and all those items, but we even said from the beginning, we're like, they're really hiring Bischoff. I mean, Pritchard, I kind of get, even though we disagree with that. That'll last a little longer because Pritchard knows how to woo the VKM machine, if you will.
Kiss his ass.
Yeah, it's all good. But, Bischoff's not about that. And it's even worse if the stories are true that Bischoff didn't want to or didn't know what was going on or didn't have any research done. I don't really believe that, by the way. Just to defend Bischoff, I think he did have a good understanding of what was going on in the realm of the WWE universe, but he's also not going to back down to any bullshit, and he doesn't care about getting fired. And if he doesn't want to if they don't want to do it his way, fuck off. Right. And I believe that's probably what happened, but you know, that's why we're talking about it today and this week is because he's in the headlines. But the reason why Bischoff is in the headlines is because of what he's done in WCW. And I think we should start getting into that. Anything else you want to add before we get started?
No, I feel that.
Oh, you guys are terrible.
I'll give you a break.
Oh, give me a break.
I won't
don't
delay
want your
the
breaks.
podcast.
Go fuck yourself. Okay. So, by the way, speaking of Eric Bischoff, Bischoff started working wrestling in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He actually worked in the AWA, believe it or not, in 1987 under Vern Gagne. He'd become an on-air interviewer there, and he actually hosted the AWA until they folded in 91. Bischoff obviously did some other items, and he's done some producing since then, but he worked in their syndicated programming. He became an on-air personality kind of by accident at the last minute. Talking about falling into the role, right? Eric Bischoff is the ultimate on-air character. We start to see that later when he gets into WCW, but this is where he started. A lot of people don't know he started in the AWA. What do you guys have to say about that?
It's funny when you look at a resume and you see that somebody worked for the AWA, you're like, wow, like he's an old school guy. And yeah, he started a long time ago, you know, being introduced in 87 basically to the wrestling world. But AWA was dying at that point. I mean, when he got on screen as like an announcer for AWA, it was just it was a dying breed. I mean, Vince had already sunk his claws in and done what he needed to do. And in 1987, all you were talking about was Mania 3, really, at that point, because that's how big it had gotten. And Crockett was even reeling from that. And then Vince was doing his little tricks in the pay-per-view realm and strong-arming people there. So AWA was just an afterthought. And especially when it folded, I mean, some of that shit is true wrestle crap. But he can put, and he was smart. He put it on his resume. When you, again, like I said, when you look at his resume and you see Eric Bischoff worked for AWA, really? Like AWA at one time was a big company and a very successful territory. And Vern Gagne was a huge star on his own. And, you know, so there was a lot of history there and a lot of lineage there. But unfortunately, Bischoff came in when it was just dying. He just sort of jumped on the end of the vine.
Sounds familiar. Any thoughts, cuz?
No, it just sometimes you forget that Bischoff was in wrestling that long. You know, just certain guy, like it seems like he would, like, you know, because he's obviously good at producing. So, you know, there's certain guys that are in wrestling and maybe they're not like passionate about pro wrestling. And like Bischoff comes off as one of those guys like, oh, it seems like he's just a producer. Like he's just known for being a producer. And that's all he wanted to do, rather, you know, producer before pro wrestling. But then you see that he was in the AWA, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, like Jess said, you think, oh, that's old school. Didn't know he was in it back then, and I didn't know much about Bischoff before WCW, obviously. So, but
and I think most people don't.
Yeah,
you know, and basically there was a moment where the AWA could meet payroll, and that's where Bischoff kind of turned to the WWF at the time, auditioned. 1990, by the way, and he was not hired. Could you imagine Eric Bischoff hired by the WWF in 1990? That'd be a different. God,
I don't even know. I don't even know what would happen. The wrestling world would have been super different. But there's a famous video. There's a famous video online of his audition, and I want to say that Vince is off camera and Bischoff is in front of the green screen, but it has like a wrestling crowd behind it. You know, it's like he's standing in an arena kind of thing, but it's in front of a green screen. And I want to say Vince gave him a broom and said, "Sell me this broom." And it was this uncomfortable thing where Bischoff was like, "Oh, I think it was I'm pretty sure it was a broom he gave him. I can't remember the object, but for some reason a broom is sticking in my head." And he was like, "Oh, you know, this you could use it to sweep things up. You could do this." And it was like a very uncomfortable like audition. He didn't get the job, needless to say. Yeah, which kind of thank goodness when you really think.
I'll say thank God.
Wrestling would be a lot different in general nowadays.
Because that brings it into the WCW era from 91 to 2001. We have his arrival in 91. He joined WCW as a C show announcer, actually. And he debuted at the Great American Bash. And
To the WCW magazine. Brad Armstrong, the WCW light heavyweight champion of the world, recently incurred a knee injury while defending that title in Japan. Brad Armstrong hoping that this knee injury will not put an early end to his championship reign, and there's a lot of challengers on the horizon hoping that as well. We'll talk more about Brad Armstrong and his knee injury in just a few moments, but before we do that, let's take a look at a highlight reel, if you will, of the WCW light heavyweight champion.
He was announcer there. He reported to actually Tony Schiavone, of all people, if you can believe that. And that reported to Jim Ross, who was the kind of the VP of broadcasting at that time. And we all know a lot of things changed. 93, there was a president of WCW by the name of Bill Watts. The monies, right?
No, that was
Jim
Hurd. Jim Hurd.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim
Was
Hurd.
the Monies.
Bill Watts is not
and
much better.
that's an interesting point because Jim Hurd actually brought Bischoff in because he was young and good looking, and he wanted to put some pressure and some fire under JR's ass. He wanted to make JR uncomfortable because Jim Hurd's a piece of shit. I don't know if I've called Jim Hurd a piece of shit in a long time, but he is. And so he just was like, oh, let's bring this guy in and we'll put some pressure on JR. It's a young, good looking guy or whatever. Never mind that JR is the fucking, even back then was probably the greatest like play by play of all time.
Yeah.
But I mean, and yes, I know who Gordon
Younger,
Soley is
high-pitched
anyway.
voice, JR.
And I just feel that he was brought in again, these odd circumstances. He was brought in to like put pressure on JR. No future for him. Like Dave said, a C fucking announcer. Like he was doing their syndicated like worldwide wrestling show. Hi, I'm Eric Bischoff. Like it was just kind of that was really going to be his future. And in this short time that we're going to talk about, it's kind of amazing that and kind of a symbol of how fucked up WCW was and what a dumpster fire that place was. Like that he jumped up the ladder. He fucking didn't just skip a rung or two. He like jumped the fuck like from the bottom of the ladder all the way up. Like probably in one.
You know what's interesting, Jess? We just had a show in our archives from a week ago called "Right Place, Right Time."
Great episode. By the way.
I don't know why Bischoff wasn't.
Yeah,
on
Bischoff
that
should
list,
have been
right?
number one. Dave,
He should have been number one.
Right place,
Right?
right time.
So-
By getting fired by WWE or not hired by WWE.
Yeah, and I think right place, right time. We were looking at wrestlers getting title shots, but gosh, in the realm of executive power, Bischoff is undeniably at the top of this list. So when you start looking at this, you realize that because of this pressure, the likes of Jim Ross leave. They go to WWF at that time. And then Bischoff goes to Bill Shaw, and Bill do it, and he applies for the job of executive producer.
and then that's when we get to Bill Watts. Bill Watts got brought in again, like he's like the 150th person that got brought in to try to run creative / production / WCW / whatever. And
that's when he resigned, right?
And he lasted like I think he got hired in 92 and it got fired before the end of 92. And so after that, WCW was back to fucking square one. They had tried these former wrestlers, like Bill Watts was a former famous wrestler, and he ran the UWF in the late 80s successfully. So well, it got bought out by Crockett, who then went out of business a year later. So that's how great the UWF was. So many people fucking praise Bill Watts, and I like some of his stuff, and I think everything has a place. But I don't understand how people praise Bill Watts so much. Jim Ross loves him, and that's fine. And because Bill Watts gave him kind of his start and sort of nurtured him and stuff. And I get you have a kinship towards somebody who like nurtured you and like was kind of like your mentor.
Gave you a chance, yeah.
Yeah, but like Bill Watts, UWF did so great in the late 80s that Crockett bought it. And then a year later, Crockett fucking folded and Turner bought it. And we're kind of in that era right now. And it's just so funny how people are like, Bill Watts this, Bill Watts that. I'm like, God damn, guys, he lasted less than ECW fucking did. So stop right now. And I'm not saying he didn't, he pushed Dr. Death, he pushed Hacksaw, he pushed everybody. But he lasted.
Oh.
Yeah, he lasted fucking 2 seconds in WCW. And people were like, oh, he was just out of touch. I was like, okay. I mean, okay, if he's a massive genius, I know everyone falls out of touch to a certain extent. I mean, Vince is out of touch, let's be honest. But at the same time, people praise him. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't born in the fucking 70s and didn't watch Bill Watts wrestle and then fucking, I don't know. Maybe I'm never was in touch with that fucking day. But anyway, I don't know how I got off on a Bill Watts rant.
You goddamn whippersnapper.
Yeah, so he got his fucking old school way. He goes to WCW, and WCW, by the way, is trying to push a cruiserweight division, right? They're in the middle of trying to push a cruiserweight division. So this fucknut says you can't jump off the top rope and jump onto a prone opponent. You'll get disqualified. Fucking dork. Like, you have you fucking idiot. Like, and then he also took the mats away from the outside of the ring so it could look extra fucking second class and dingy and shitty. So literally they had all concrete around the ring, no mats. And he's like, that's trash. That's going to look painful when you get thrown out. I'm like, no, it's fucking not. It looks like a fucking second rate fucking company.
It looks like I'm inside of a gym.
And then he also dimmed the lights to the crowd, which makes it look like no one's there, which probably it wasn't. They probably were in like a 5,000 seat arena and they had 500 people there. But I mean, like, it was all bad. So he gets fired. And then Bischoff, of all people, creeps in and, like Dave was saying, and take it away, Dave. He applies for the job.
Yeah, it's funny because Ross and Schiavone, you would think, oh yeah, those are the top guys, but Bischoff was hired in place of Watts, right? And Schiavone remained a producer, and we know that Ross was granted his release and went to work for WWF, and then Bischoff and Bob Dew worked together as partners for a brief time, and they clashed over that direction of WCW, right? And in 94, Bischoff was promoted from executive producer to executive vice president, putting him in charge of everything, which causes Dew to resign. And then also there were some other people, event managers resigned. Jim Barnett resigned. And then Bischoff convinced Turner executives to finance WCW in order to compete with WWF. If you read Bischoff's books, if you know, he's like, well, what do we need? You know, you talk to Turner, what do we need? What do you got to do? He's like, well, you know, and we'll get to it. It's like, put me on Monday nights, right? Finance me, get me this. And Turner's like, okay. Turner took something that was always recording a loss. Every single
Turner was
week,
pumping money into it. He loved it because he
loved the idea of wrestling.
Wrestling always drew good ratings. So when he was working and trying to make the Superstation TBS like a thing, you know, this unheard of cable thing like that he was trying. The Braves and pro wrestling got him big ratings all of the time. Mm-hmm. So while he was trying to establish this network, these Superstations, wrestling always was there. So when he bought Crockett's share of the NWA, which was the biggest chunk, and turned it into WCW, he was just like, I don't care. He was known going around the office telling you, I don't care how much money it loses, it stays. And so that's just what like he did. It got good ratings almost all the time. So he loved it and he always pumped stock into it. And I want to go back to what Dave said, and Cuz said this too, that Eric was a good producer. You know, everybody wanted to make the monies and just get a piece of the pie before. And they tried so hard, whether it was trying to bring Old School back or try to, you know, bring the Ding Dongs in or Arachnaman or fucking Big Josh with Bears coming down or whatever. They all were just,
what's wrong with the Ding Dongs, bro?
Vince is getting the kids and he's getting, you know, so we're just going to copy him. And, God willing, we'll get some of the monies and a piece of the pie, which is just the stupidest fucking like business model I've ever heard of. So Bischoff comes along and Bischoff's like, okay, our production is shit. It should really start. It matters how you produce people. So you could have the best character ever, but if the production's awful and you look second rate, it's never going to get off the ground. So I'm going to light up the arenas. I'm going to make sure whether we give away tickets or not, I'm going to make sure that it's well lit, or we're going to move all the people over to one side of the building, which was exactly what Vince did. And Vince did the same thing. Everyone talks about Vince and his ability to make giants over. Okay, that's true. He did that with Hulk for years, and I get it. And he makes stars. Okay, I agree with that too. All of that is very true. And he did tell good stories, even though it was bubblegum and stuff in the 90s, whatever, but it was really good stories. Vince always was like 6 months thought out already, right? At SummerSlam, they knew the main event of WrestleMania already of the next year. So, but what nobody really understood, and what Vince understood early on, is production. That's why he did the syndicated Superstars of Wrestling and Wrestling Challenge. He would get an arena, he would put 15,000 people in there, and he would film like 4 weeks worth of television. And he did it because it was a full arena and it was lit and you could see the top row, and you didn't have to, it wasn't just like the one spotlight on the ring and everything else was dark. He did that because he knew like that looks fucking top notch. That looks class A. It doesn't look Bush League. It doesn't look like the smoke filled arenas, like so many people have said, that phrase. And so he did that. So Bischoff's like, well, we're going to fucking do that too. And Dave, I know you'll get into it, but he changed the way they did house shows as well, right?
Oh, it's entirely different. I mean, it actually rolls exactly into what we're talking about. I mean, when he was promoted from where he was to executive producer, he starts basically saying, "Hey, we're not making any money on these fucking house shows." So what Bischoff does is he literally moves the production to Disney MGM Studios in Florida, where really, I mean, everything I've looked at, everything I've researched, and I'm not that big of a researcher, I'll be honest, they didn't charge, Jess.
No, it was all if you got admission into the park, you got in there. So they had like some.
So if you wanted to get out of the heat, you can watch some WCW. Quite frankly,
All systems
Sure.
operating within normal design parameters.
mm-hmm.
Engage cybernetic generation sequence. Malfunction detected. System overload. Warning. 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 System overload critical. Warning. Warning.
Yeah, it was like a 200 or 300 seat room, and the ring was on a circle platform, and the ring spun, like, and it was just like he just changed it to, well, yeah, there's only 200 people in here, but there's no empty seats, and
Yeah.
I can position the cameras to where I shoot the audience, and all you see is crowd in the background, and we put applause and boo signs up like a production studio, like television,
Sure.
like the old Crockett promotion used to do, the old Mid Atlantic,
Like what a producer would do, Jess.
like
which is
NWA
what
Power,
kind of
like
Bischoff-
NWA Power is doing right now. And
Yeah,
Yes,
perfect
great
point.
show,
Yeah.
by the way.
so Bischoff,
Power's doing the exact same thing, and Bischoff did it too. And Bischoff realized that all I have to care about is television ratings. I don't have to care about what the house draws. And Bischoff has said this several times. He's like, everybody wanted to do more house shows to try to get more money, when you don't realize if you put out more house shows that are losing money, you're going to lose more
yeah,
money.
fuck, like
He's
the
like,
rent's not
it's
going to
pretty
change.
basic.
Like
So
nothing-
Bischoff's like,
yeah.
let me. Well, where can I go where I don't have to pay for an arena? Oh, Disney MGM. They're just going to give this to me so I can put this on television, and I can try to get TV money, which was a totally different concept at the time. You start thinking about where Vince was eventually moving that way. Don't get me wrong, because he understood TV, but he also was really, really attached to house shows. And understandably so, because
that was working for Vince. That was just,
of course, that's what I'm
yeah.
saying. They were making a ton of money on house. WCW was not doing that, so they were. It was the all money
Because
ball,
it
right?
wasn't
Adapt or die.
Bischoff was the first one that steered away from let's copy Vince and make the monies. And like, so people not understanding, it was just working for Vince because they kind of had the biggest wrestler ever up to that point, Hulk Hogan. So that's kind of going to move
And
the
they
needle.
bought
in the
all the
direction
other
you wanna
territory
go.
ones as well,
So
right,
instead,
Jess?
WCW did not have that. So they were just
Yeah.
like trying to break the. I don't understand it. Like, he has a bird and a guy with the bird on his shoulder, and I have Big Josh and Bears. What's the difference? Well, the difference, you dumb fuck, is that Hulk Hogan's driving the fucking bus, and then they got lucky
The
and they got a
difference is you
Macho
don't have
Man,
Hogan.
and then they got lucky and they got a Warrior. So you don't fucking get that, like, Vince knows how to make cartoon characters capture the kids, literally reach out and pull the kids in the TV, like The Exorcist. That's kind of scary. So there's a bad analogy
Whoa.
because that's just freaking me the shit out right now. But like, it just, nobody gets it. Everybody was like, let's copy the baby. And so if you were going to copy the monies, you would make Sting and Lex Luger your fucking top guys immediately, because they were the larger than life cartoon characters, charismatic, but they never did. They would want to make the bunnies, but they would just put the belt on weird people and not push the right people. And Bischoff was the first one, like we've been saying, to go in there and just be like, God, like, fuck, like, before you make stars, you got to fucking make your product nice. Like, come on, guys, we don't have these stars. We don't have what Vince has. He's doing house show business because he has actual like mega stars. We have fucking like Arachnaman and shit and the Ding Dongs, and so we don't.
Because
Yeah.
I hear you sighing in the background. You
No,
wanna
no,
add
no.
to that.
No, just excitement. I'm because you kind of have to admit that you're kind of defending that the Warrior was
Because,
it,
goddamn it, we waited a week
you
to
didn't
bring you
have
on
the
the
guy that played the
and you
Warrior.
sigh.
couldn't
I
get it
bring
done
you
anywhere else,
in.
and
Leave it
Bischoff
to
didn't-
you're
Cuz
like,
to like
"No, I
leave it
don't-
to
I
Cuz
don't
to
have
like,
it."
like shrink this episode down to about the Warrior, even though we always bring up Hulk every episode.
Well, we got to
But, like,
counter it, you know.
But yeah, I mean, Vince made stars for God's sakes. Like, how can you deny that? And they missed
But
that.
exactly.
And then when they realized that, okay, we're going to try to make stars, they're not understanding that it was a combination of everything. You have to produce Hulk the right way. You have to. And you have to book him the right way, which is a part of producing in a certain extent. And then you have to put him on the right talk shows. You have to put him on the right syndicated television at the right time. Not every week. Don't wear people out of him. Don't like water him down. You do it right. You produce him right. And so Bischoff is the first one to be like, let's just start from the ground and put the ring in the middle of a blank canvas. And then what are we going to put around that? Not a dark arena, not a ring with no mats around the side to make the dirty fucking concrete with the sticky fucking beer spilt all over it and shit like shine in the camera angle.
Well,
like, I mean,
and by the way, Jess, not to interrupt, but there was another big portion of this that really matters. And while this is all happening, there's a certain greased up, over the top wrestler that happens to be filming Thunder in Paradise right there in Florida. When they're
that's so
doing all
odd.
this.
We're going to talk about Hulk
Brother.
Hogan. That's weird. Brother.
I'm here again, brother.
Oh my God,
I'm
because
back.
it matters. Because it matters. All I'm trying to say is that, Bischoff goes to Turner, and Turner says, "What do you need to compete?"
My Thunder.
I need-
penis.
I need Hogan. I need Hulk Hogan
a
to
thermos-sized
compete.
penis. And he's like, I think you should go.
Now it's a thermos.
You
Now
should
it's a
go get
fucking
Hulk
thermos.
Hogan.
All right. So there was a couple of things there, right? You have to understand. There's, in my opinion, three major things that happen. Bischoff pulls house shows. He goes to a free arena where he can try to get TV money. He gets Hogan on a major signing. That's a big fucking deal, obviously. And he increases pay-per-views. He goes to 7 a year, and then he goes to 10, and then he goes monthly. This all matters in the realm of what you're trying to build on TV to get people to buy pay-per-views, right? Which is all that Vince wanted to do when Vince just did it to piss off, the likes of Watts.
And there's a
everybody
famous
else.
story too, and I don't remember the principles involved, but someone that was a high-ranking exec with Turner, Bischoff made a bet with him, and the guy's like, "You'll never turn a profit with this company. It's never profited since Ted's owned it." And Bischoff said, "I bet you that I will profit at least $1 at the end of 1995, and if I do, I want you in a public meeting to get down. I'll bet you $1 that will profit $1 is what he said. And he's like, a profit at least $1, and I'll bet you $1. And I want you to get down on your knees and hand it to me when I win. And Bischoff at the end of 1995 profited more than $1 with WCW.
Way more.
Because he did all the cuts that Dave was mentioning. And the guy did. They had a big executive meeting, and the guy got on his knees and gave him the $1 in front of everybody. And Bischoff was the first guy since Ted Turner had bought WCW in 1988 to turn a profit with that company in 1995, which 1995 was kind of shit for both companies, to be honest. It was a real bad year for wrestling, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Except for ECW,
Shitty.
it was
Since
coming up
93,
because
right?
people,
Yes.
because kind of like today's atmosphere, ECW was coming up in 95 when people, the hardcore audience, were just sick of the shit, the cartoon character and the shitty stuff. There was still kind of a mainstream or a casual audience, a little bit left. And so they would still watch the bullshit, but like some hardcore fans were like, we don't want to watch Doinks. We don't want, Doink is a bad example because the evil Doink was cool, but we don't want to watch
Yes.
Hulk anymore. We don't want to watch cartoon characters anymore and the ninjas and the Quangs. And
There's only
Yeah,
one major
Quangs.
difference to that comparison is that I'm pretty sure AEW will not bounce checks. But anyway,
No, you're right.
Moving
You're
on.
right.
That's not gonna happen.
neither here nor there. You're right. But I mean, like, that's
Yeah.
neither here nor there. But I mean, like, that's the kind of, we're sort of in a
Really?
similar
if
scenario.
I was a wrestler, it would be neither here nor there. I'm just saying.
Oh, God damn it, Dave. Are we going to have an episode of fucking what's right for pro wrestlers? Is that
All
what
right.
we're converting this into?
ECW time.
What?
Yeah.
I'm just what?
things about
If I
ECW
didn't
that
get
makes
if I
Dave
didn't
mad.
get if I didn't collect a paycheck on a house that was packed, I'd be a little
I
pissed.
didn't say anything negative about the wrestlers. I said you're right about AEW, and that was the point I was making. It was just the rise of
Yeah.
ECW. It wasn't the check bouncing.
I'm just saying it's the only difference. I wasn't trying to be a dick.
You are, though, thoroughly all the time.
Well, you can make me the dick, but I'm pretty sure most people will be like, yeah, you know, Dave's right. If I work, you fucking pay me.
I wasn't even trying to talk on that subject right now.
I know you weren't trying to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it.
Right, let's get
So,
back
anyways,
to
we're
ECW.
going to move
Eric,
on
championship
to the
wrestling.
next level of WCW.
So he did.
I know. Jess is going to be upset. It's all good.
I'm not upset. I'm sighing. That's disappointment.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Disappointment.
And by the way, by the time this all happens, you know, we're getting to the point where Bischoff eventually gets signed as the president of WCW.
What year was
like
this?
The Almighty.
What year?
But before that happens, Bischoff signs a major WWF superstar. Well, not as major as Hulk Hogan, let's be honest.
Hey,
He already
yo.
had him signed
So
at this
yeah, he
point.
does. He signed Hogan in '94, which was a coup. And
That was a big deal.
And-
but it wasn't going anywhere in the hindsight, right? You have the Flair, Hogan.
You're correct, Dave. But at the same time, it kind of did because Bischoff's plan was Hulk was available, and so basically they went.
And you signed him.
He went to Turner, and he's like, "Look, we got to kind of open up I know you've been kind of dumping money into this company a lot, and he hadn't profited yet. I said he profited at the end of '95. We're talking about '94 right now. So he's like, look, like we're that close. I've cut this cost. I've cut that cost. You got to trust me. So look." Hulk Hogan's available. And I know that's crazy to even think that Hulk will ever go to WCW, but he's not. He's on the outs with Vince. He's done there. He's doing Thunder in Paradise. Rick knows him, as in Ric Flair. So I'll send Rick out there. And I want to say that Sting did an episode of Thunder in Paradise too. And so he's like, look, we're kind of getting in, you know, with him or whatever. Flair goes out. Flair arranges a meeting. Hulk and Bischoff talk. Hulk's like, basically, you can't afford me. Not to be a dick, but he was just like, look, brother, are you going to come to the table with the big boy deal? And because Hulk's like, I'm going to put my penis on the fucking table. I'm going to put my big ass cock on this table, brother. And so Bischoff's like,
the table, then you're going to have to pay for that table. You're going to lose money.
Brother. Right? And Bischoff's like, I don't want that. I'm trying to profit. I bet some guy a fucking $1. I cannot afford tables. So he was like, okay, like, let me go to Turner. And Turner's like, sure. Like, what do you want? I can have TBS pay him. I can have, you know what I mean? Like, we can find some way to pay him in there. Do you really think this will work? Yes, I do. So they fucking sign him.
What's happening, brother? You know something, Mean Gene? We're on nationwide TV, brother. WCW and Hulk Hogan. All my Hulkamaniacs are on TV with us right now. And I told you, little dude, that Hulkamania is going to run wild. Check this out, brother. Check it out. Oh, my.
He beats Flair in '94 for the title. And he uses, I know the ratings did flatten out at the end of '94, and so did the pay-per-view buy rates, but they spiked really big in the beginning. But what Bischoff really needed Hulk for was to be taken seriously from the Pepsi advertisers and the Coca-Cola advertisers and the big guys that did believe in WWE at one time, and they believe in the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball. So he's like, we need that. We need that big revenue. We can't just take these little fucking, like, you know, O'Reilly's Auto Parts shit. You know, we can't just live off that. We have to live off something bigger. So when you get a Hulk Hogan that fucking works for your company, advertisers and foreign markets were like, okay, we know him. We know Hulk. Yes. Like, we'll advertise with you. So that works. So yes, at the end of '94, beginning of '95, the ratings did kind of flatten out, or not the ratings did flatten out. Nitro had not debuted yet. And the pay-per-view buy rates had kind of just like adjusted and kind of gone back to sort of normal, a little bit above average, but not as much as what Hulk was making. But Bischoff's like, so all the dirt sheets and shit were shitting on that. Meanwhile, Bischoff's kind of smiling, going like, you don't understand. Like, I just got this advertiser and that advertiser and this one. And then, like Dave's saying, he gets a guy named Randy Savage at the end of '94. And what comes along with Randy Savage, Dave? What sponsor?
Slim Jim.
Fucking Slim Jim.
But I wasn't talking about that. Whatever.
Who were you talking about after that?
It was not about anybody. Yeah, you're just jumping, bro. It's all good. Don't worry about it.
Jesus Christ.
You know?
You said before I went off on my tangent that they hired someone not as big as Hulk, though. Were you talking about Savage? Or were you talking about Brother Brudai?
Go back and look at the tape. It's fine. It's
That's
fine.
what you said.
You're right.
Is that what he said?
Savage is a big part of that. But the big thing that we're trying to get to is who he really signed, who was not trying to portray themselves as the WWF, even though they did. And that's where, you know, Scott Hall comes in. That's Razor Ramon, but he wasn't Razor Ramon when he came into WCW. And then he was joined by Kevin Nash, better known as
Did you
Diesel.
just shit on me when we were talking about 1994 and then you hyper jumped to 1996? Is that you just did that right now to me? You just did that right now. And you did say that he did hire someone not as big as Hulk, and I did mistakenly say that was Savage, which is not what you meant.
It's not untrue though. He is not as big as Hulk.
But did you just hyper jump?
It wasn't what I was
you
talking
just shit
about.
on me right now and you hyper jumped to 1996.
I was trying to say that.
No, fuck it. Let's just
Savage
jump. And
is
then
not-
in 2001, guys, shit went off the fucking rails, and Bischoff was going to buy the company. Let's just do that.
We briefly
Jesus
mentioned
Christ.
1995. We briefly touched
Why is
on 95.
anybody?
I'm trying to.
why is
I was trying
anybody
to warm
talking
up
about-
the engine. I was trying to rub Dave's ding dong, a little bit, and get him all hard and
Don't
excited.
touch it, bro. Don't even
What?
think about touching it.
How
That's just
dare
that
you?
doesn't do anything for me. No, you have to understand that I love Savage, but Savage is not a part of this story in a major realm. Savage is there.
I know, but Bischoff
But-
got him because of Hulk.
That's
because of
great.
Hulk. But I mean,
That's great.
that's part of the puzzle, right? He wanted to get.
But let me ask you a question: if Savage went heel and was the head of the NWO,
No,
wouldn't it be this
I'm not
big?
even on that subject. You're right about
I
what
know
you're
you're
gonna say,
not.
but I'm saying that
because
playing up into it.
You're on a crazy tangent
I'm
with
not.
Macho. It doesn't
I'm,
make sense.
I'm following the timeline, which if you'd listen for a second and stop interrupting me. We were going from 94 to 95, and then Dave's like, let's hyper jump to 2018. And I was like, no, what do you mean 2018, Dave? That's crazy. You're just talking about crazy. I'm just saying it all started falling together. He got the foreign markets, he got the foreign advertisers. Then Savage comes in with Slim
He
Jim.
got Slim Jim, yeah,
Which increased
absolutely.
business, which gets him to a point where Nitro,
By
you
about
just jumped over Nitro.
$700,000. Yeah,
you
I
just
agree.
jumped over Nitro because Nitro debuted in 95 and you just jumped to Hall in 96. So you skipped Nitro. So again,
That's true, yeah.
Let me guide you. I will guide you, my friend. Let me guide
The
you.
only
in
thing
like
we
a plane.
mentioned about 95 was Bischoff turning our profit.
Yes.
So, yeah, we didn't get to the Nitro part.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Nitro, which is part of getting Hulk and Savage and all those
Okay.
guys.
Bischoff went to Turner and he asked Turner for Monday nights.
He did.
And he got
Dave
it.
did mention that.
Yeah, like an hour ago when we were talking about like 1991, he mentioned that. And Dave, let me guide you like you guide me on the Top Gun game when I can't feel the fucking plane in the air and you can do it apparently in your fucking sleep.
Yeah.
On a side note, yes,
So-
this is true. So we're playing the fucking Top Gun game on Nintendo, and I cannot
It's
feel the fucking
fantastic.
plane in the air to save my life. And one time, Dave's over at my house,
And who saves you?
and I'm
Who saves
I'm
you?
struggling like a motherfucker. And then Dave just goes casually, "Let me see that for a second." So I was like, "Okay." Fucking Dave has a serious look in his eye. So I give him the fucking controller, and anyone who's played this game knows that fueling that fucking plane in the air is harder than landing on the aircraft carrier. So Dave fucking takes the control, and within 5 seconds, he fucking fuels it, and he's all, "Here you go." And I was like, "What the flying fuck?" Like he just did it in a second. So
That's great.
I can't believe
I
that
appreciate
you
video
remember
game
that one.
stories.
it was ridiculous.
And then you're bringing that up.
Well, it's the
fucking
truth.
Eric Bischoff
That's
podcast.
my
right
metaphor.
now.
Fine.
Let me guide you like
Well,
you
I mean,
guided me
Bishop-
back in the day. I was dying
Young
on Top Gun.
Bischoff
and
was
Dave
like a
saved
Tom Cruise, so there you go.
I
It
don't
all connects.
see it.
It connects.
me. The black hair.
Fuck
it's
off,
the black hair,
cuz.
I guess.
Yeah, the black short hair.
Anyway, so let me catch Dave up to speed because we're derailing
Yes.
Dave right now.
I don't care.
Nitro,
I don't even
Nitro
care.
debuted in Labor Day of 1995. It was a huge deal,
Yep.
like Dave said
Labor
before.
Day.
He goes into they get Hulk, they get Savage, they get everybody, and they're still they don't split the audience on Monday nights. They bring more. So now they're trading
Yeah.
victories back and forth. Each show's getting like 2 million viewers, which is really good back then for cable. And so Turner's like, what do we got to do? What else we got to do? Bischoff is kind of out of ideas, and he's like, I don't know. Give me a slot on one of your networks going up against Monday Night Raw. And
Yeah.
Turner was like, okay, no problem. TNT, same time that Raw's on, you got it. And Bischoff's like, I don't know what I just fucking asked for right now, but I got it. Like, so
He never thought he would get it.
yeah, he never thought he
Yeah.
would get it. Never.
Yeah.
I want Monday nights
absolutely.
at 8:00. I think he never.
And
gave it to me.
they
I
did
remember that from
crazy
the-
shit. Like, and Bischoff again is the head of all this too. He did crazy shit. Like he would do these little ratings tricks where he's like, Ted, can I go on? I want to go on 5 minutes before Raw every week. So if Raw starts at 8 p.m., I want to go on at 7:55. And Turner's like, okay, that's odd. I mean, because back in the day, the Superstation, right, 6:05 Eastern time, that was always the big thing. Power Hour is actually copying that time right now. So he's like, yeah, I want to
Yes,
go on
exactly.
at 7. I want to go at 7:55 Eastern time. So Turner's like, okay, sounds good. here's what this clever motherfucker did, which at the time got people in all kinds of like an uproar. He gets on at 7:55 when he knows a taped Raw, not live. Nitro was always live. A taped Raw was going to start at 8 o'clock. He would go live with Nitro at 7:55 and said, oh, by the way, guys, if you're thinking about turning to the World Winding Federation at 8 o'clock, don't do it. It's pre-taped. Let me read you the results. And that motherfucker read all the results of Monday Night Raw. Oh, Shawn Michaels super kicks the big guy. Boring. We've seen that before. Razor Ramon beats Quang the Ninja. Is that even a guy? Like all this crazy shit. And people were like, you can't do that. But people started watching and people started taking notice inside the industry. That's when I think Vince first goes, okay, like this he's swinging for the fences. Like he's trying to hurt me bad. Yeah.
And they would do all the little tricks, like they want to beat him to break, as they all talked about. Like, well, if we beat him to break, we'll get back first. They'll tune back to us first. It's all ratings play, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, all those things were happening. All those little fucking cheap shots,
And it was, but I have to say,
it's a fight,
that,
right?
Yeah, it's a total fight, and I have to say that Vince was always competing against guys that were out of touch and on the defense all the time, all the dying territories. This is the first time.
Bischoff was like, "No, we're just going to go offensive."
This is the first time that a guy was fighting I'm going to fight you because I'm trying to come up the ladder. I'm not old and dying and just trying to fend you off as you're beating me up. I want to fight you and I want to climb up the ladder and I want to put you in those guys' position. And that was all Bischoff's attitude. I know we're going to get into the shit later when he gets burnt out, but he was, sure. Bischoff was on fire. He was aggressive. And when the production approach started winning and then he started getting the bigger names, he got Nitro, it was on at that point. And Dave, Dave, so, what kind of a fucking scenario happened now?
Oh,
Go, cuz. I was going to say, this could be a mid-promotion for a future episode, but got to remind everyone.
You're a mid-promotion.
Well, God for us. A little promotion for us. But also, at the same time, talking about the story, Eric Bischoff, great, because how you mentioned about him talking to Ted Turner, getting the Monday nights, a great way to watch it, and I'm bringing us into this. We're going to do a future episode on this topic, but go back to the Monday Night Wars documentary, and he tells that story. That's where I first heard that story, and I'm sure you guys too as well. Before the days of dirt sheets and the internet, go back and listen to that, and then we'll do a future episode on that topic alone. But he just tells a great story about how he talks to Ted Turner. That's all I wanted to mention earlier.
I believe that a lot of people think that Eric Bischoff's a dick because he portrayed a character for so long that was easily hateable, right? But so when people see a documentary of him now, I think people tend to not want to believe him because they're like, whatever, dick, liar. But I'm like, no, he was.
Go back and watch that.
Think about what Dave has been saying up to this point, how fast he jumped this fucking ladder. That's not, if he was a dick and a phony, that would not have happened because I'm not saying anyone before him was a phony. I mean, Bill Watts had a legit name in the past.
Yes.
And Jim Herd was a phony piece of shit. But I mean,
Bill Watts though wrestled.
Yeah, but I mean, Bischoff he had to do all of these things that we're talking about, and they had to work, and they did. And that's not a look. I said before that he hadn't really had any kind of success like this outside of WCW, which is true. But the success he enjoyed in the time we're talking about right now was legendary. Changed the industry, changed it.
Yeah,
absolutely, for sure. And that's what brings us into dun 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 the NWO. All of a sudden in '96,
Sleazy E, yo.
Bischoff just decides to sign Scott Hall or Razor Ramon, and then 2 weeks later he's joined by Kevin Nash. We can talk about the curtain call, but that's not really our calling tonight because that's a whole different.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have Scott Hall episodes and Kevin Nash episodes in the future.
right?
So it was a big coup.
And they come in as the outsiders, and Bischoff intentionally tried to depict them as someone who's coming in from outside of WCW trying to take over. And you can even, put that, implementation of this is the WWF trying to take us over. And they had to actually go on national television and say, do you work for the WWF? And they actually had to say, no, we don't work for
that's
them.
How fucking,
just
that's
to
how
avoid
real
litigation
it
and
got. That's
lawsuits,
how well
right?
it was working.
That's how done. Yeah,
Is
that's
that
how
Vince,
over
Vince
it
all
was.
knew it
I
was
believe.
Vince all knew it was fucking storyline shit because he's in the industry, but it was affecting
you
them
still
so
gotta
much.
sue.
It was affecting them so much that Vince is like, you gotta make a public statement, you motherfuckers, I'm gonna sue you. Like, and he just got like, it got crazy. Like they weren't coming across as Razor Ramon and Diesel, but every now and then Scott Hall would be like Chico and Razor Ramon. They would do that to kind of get a little dig in, and they always kind of portrayed. They never
them.
They never said
Hey, yo, right?
yeah. They never said the words. You're coming from the WWF. They're like, you're trying to come in and invade. You don't belong here. And they're like, yeah, we know. And then, like Dave said, at a very famous pay-per-view, Great American Bash 96, Bischoff comes out on the interview stage, and the nitros leading up before was that Bischoff's like, I'll tell you guys, because Hall and Nash came aboard and they said, yeah, choose your 2 guys from WCW and we'll fight them in a tag match. Choose your 2 guys. And Bischoff's like, you know what? Show up this weekend at the Great American Bash and I'll tell you. So he gets out on the stage on the rampway, and he's like, yeah, and so Hall and Nash come out and he's like, hey, you guys want to know my 2 guys? I'm not prepared to tell you yet. I'll tell you next week on Nitro. And then all of a sudden, like Nash and Hall are like, oh, you don't jerk us around. You don't jerk us around, Chico. Hall hits him in the stomach and Nash powerbombs him off the fucking stage. Now you might see that shit often. But back then, on a mainstream wrestling show, you never saw a regular announcer. And that's all that Bischoff was here. He wasn't the character Eric Bischoff yet. He was an announcer.
Yeah.
You never saw an announcer take a power fucking bomb off a stage onto a table. And I remember watching that going...
Shocking.
Whoa! What are they doing? Security! Get up there right now. Get security up there! Unbelievable! Please get him. Unbelievable. This is sick. Yeah. Tony, I got it. Hold on. Where's he at? He's right down below us here. Oh my God.
I remember watching that going, WCW is fucking onto something right now. And not to dismiss the fact that the cruiserweight era was coming in already. Bischoff had already 2 months before.
On fire, yeah.
Had already hired Dean Malenko and Rey Mysterio, and all those guys were doing amazing matches here. And it was like, with Hall and Nash coming in as like the top storyline, it just like, people started gravitating towards WCW. They were making people talk. WWF was boring and the same old shit. And so like it just changed the wrestling industry. And that powerbomb to me signified the beginning of the change. We have not even gotten to Bash at the Beach yet. But so this is before that. No. This is a month before that. They had already started like changing the viewing habits and people going, fuck, Diesel and Razor Ramon are on the other channel and they just powerbomb this fucking announcer through. And it broke a lot of ground for Bischoff here because people kind of started on TV. They would start talking about that Bischoff is the vice president. Up until this point, he'd only been an announcer. This is way before the Mr. McMahon character, way before. So Bischoff was already ahead of the curve here. It was amazing. It was a great segment. It was awesome.
No, and what people don't understand is that, people are trying to, obviously the WWE at the time are trying to counterpart, and they talk about, the oldies of WWF trying to be in WCW and
or that all WCW could do was hire the old guys.
And,
The Nacho
all
Man.
that crap. And that was their response, right? And Bischoff, quite frankly, was probably on the other side going, oh, this is their response? Just wait till we see what we got coming. And what they had coming at some point, I don't even think Bischoff even understood yet, but they were trying to develop a third man to really set this thing on fire.
A good storyline, and then at the end of that storyline is we have another mystery guy. Is like, how can you not fucking be on a goddamn like cliff at that point, like a cliffhanger? How can you not fucking be like, I gotta fucking watch?
Yeah,
and that's what he did.
It's the ultimate soap opera.
And
you want to tune in every week.
There's a lot of rumors. I want to say there was a similar angle going on in Japan where one of the promotions, not New Japan, I want to say All Japan, I could be wrong, but it was one
Maybe
of the promotions
Noah too.
Yeah, maybe it was Noah, and it was like some guys were sort of invading, or they were trying to take the company over. And that was the storyline. So Bischoff went to Japan on one of their tours and saw that and thought, that might be interesting for the future. Fast forward a few months when he actually gets Scott Hall to agree to hire, and then he gets Kevin Nash to agree. Then he's like, wait a minute. What if I kind of insinuate that these guys are coming from the WWF up north and they're coming here to penetrate? WCW had been this boring hick promotion like 2-3 years before. So why can't I just say that they're coming down to be like, hey, we're coming over here because Billionaire Ted's throwing fucking money at us. So why would we not come? But we're also going to come in to show you that we're so superior anyway. He's throwing all this money at us because we're way better than your WCW guys. And like, it worked. It just fucking, it was, again, it's that spark that we always talk about. It just sparked and it took off. And this is before Bash at the Beach, even.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just on
No,
Monday
absolutely.
Nitro.
It was on Nitro every week. And then it was getting to the point, well, who's your third man? And we know the backstory. We know that Hogan was tapped initially and he was not down with it. They tapped Sting. And
Sting, yeah.
I think they were unsure about
hindsight,
Sting. I think Sting was unsure, but they were like, I don't know if we want to do that with him because the person that would make sense.
You kind of killed the brand at that point.
Yeah,
Sting is the only thing keeping WCW
at least at that
intact.
time that WCW had their head on straight. They realized there has to be a face at the other end defending WCW. That's got to be the storyline, right? So
and there's nobody else but Sting because Flair couldn't do it. Flair was not the face.
If you bring Sting in and make him the third guy, it kills it. But what better way than a guy that came from there and came over here, and maybe this whole time he was a spy or a bug, and it ended up being Dave. Go ahead and take it away.
Or maybe he gets there and he realizes that it's horseshit.
Yeah, right. That I'm way better than this place.
Yeah, and quite frankly, at that moment, it was probably true. But Hogan kind of resisted. I know Jess and I have talked about this. Hogan's concerned about merch money, and they're like, bro.
Merch money, bro.
If this goes down the way we think it's going to, you're not going to lose fucking merch.
Need my penis enlarged in surgery money, brother.
And they were just
and the NWO merch is probably some of the greatest merch next to Austin, right?
His thermos dick had to get some kind of compensation for sure.
All right, you can talk about the Hogan juicer while
you don't keep a big ass cock without feeding it.
Jess, do you own a Hogan juicer?
I did.
Yeah, good for you. How'd that work out for you?
Thanks for deflating me on that one, Dave. Like I was all confident.
I'm sure it was amazing.
Dave's like, "Hey, Jess, you fucking idiot! Didn't you? I wonder who would buy a fucking piece of shit product." And I was like, "I fucking did. I bought it. I'm sorry."
Yeah, you bought the juicer before you bought that fucking Foreman grill. Yeah,
that's true.
Vince.
You're a real asshole, Dave. How about that? You're a real asshole, Dave. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Steer us back on track here.
Back
to the topic.
Jesus Christ.
Vince was sitting at home watching Bash at the Beach. He looked at the TV. His eye twitched a little bit because he was so mad, and then he said, "God damn, that was genius."
No, he's probably on the conference call with everybody, and they're watching it, and they're like, "Wow, did you see what just happened right now?" He's like,
"Oh, you talking about jumping?"
He's all I did.
Jumping that shark.
And we'll talk about the money. And he hung up, and he's like, "Linda, get the fuck in here so I can slap you, bitch!" And he got all pissed, and it was a fucking big. It was a crazy shit. It was crazy in the McMahon household that night, and then he got on the conference call.
But that was literally the turning point, right? We get to Bash of the Beach.
Vince slapping Linda was the turning point.
Sure. Yeah.
It wasn't the NWO. It was like, and then he struck his wife.
Oh shit. Okay.
We're talking about spousal abuse at this point. Fuck, I don't know what happened right now.
Just because Linda's a Trump supporter doesn't mean you hit the bash.
Maybe it backfired. Maybe he called her in there and she's like, and she slapped him. He's like, ah, and he goes flying over the couch and she's like, you shut the fuck up, Vince. And everyone knows I've been running this thing.
Vince is getting smaller and shorter every day. I think Linda could kick his ass.
No, but she's probably been running everything behind the scenes more than we think, to be honest.
Yeah. It's possible.
She's
the Roosevelt era.
She's the real fucking monster.
But all I'm saying is when Hogan churns, and we should pull a clip here.
Speaking of Orange Man.
And turns on Savage and establishes the New World Order, the NWO.
Hogan is in the building!
You're damn right he is!
Go get him, Hulkster! Yeah, but whose side is he on?
What are you talking about?
Whose side is he on?
What are you talking about? Yes, sir!
Get him, Hogan! Go get him, baby!
Come on and get some of this now.
Who's bad now, boys?
Hulk Hogan arrived What is he doing? God! Is he the third man?
There's very little spots where I see the crowd shocked, throwing things into the ring.
Yeah, it was.
Probably killing people. It was the ultimate turning point.
The funny thing is like, I don't even know if it's called the funny thing, but like, people were booing. 50% of people were cheering Hulk and booing him. First of all, you go into WCW territory. He was kind of sort of booed-ish. You could hear it in the background in '94, but it got really prominent when he started just being the same old boring yellow and red Hulk. So he was 50. Yeah. He was a face, and they were trying to shove him down your throat as a face all during like 94 and 95 and the beginning of 96.
Agreed.
But people were kind of booing him. And if they would have people cheering him, it's turning off the wrestling audience that's changing. So like people are just like, okay, well, I don't think I want to watch this anymore. So like what ended up happening was he came out and he turned legit heel, and it could have gone either way. People could be like, we don't like you at all anyway. And no matter what form you are, fuck you, Hulk, which would be bad heat. Or what could happen happened. The biggest wrestler of all time, who was heel when he first started his career, but you only remember his WWF run where he got famous, right? The ultimate Americana, good guy, superhero come to life, come out of the television, grab you, brother, like suck up my thermos penis, brother. Americana. And like all that stuff, like everybody knew him as that. And then he actually turned heel on a wrestling angle, which made a lot of sense and which is impactful. And it was done well, even though when he walked down the aisle that night, I was a massive Hulk fan. And when he walked down the aisle that night, I was like, he's going to turn fucking heel. I knew it. Like when he walked down, and like people in the crowd were still there in the match. They're in the moment. Who's going to be the third guy? And like, and it just, he dropped the leg on Savage, and people were like Dave said, they were stunned silent, and they started throwing more shit in the ring than I've ever seen what a scene. What an amazing scene. Even when Gene Okerlund's in there trying to interview him afterwards, they are pelting them with Coke, like, cups of Coke, cups of beer, fucking wads of trash, like throwing it. Like the ring was filled like with just fucking like, people were probably shitting in cups and throwing it for all I know. Like it was nuts. Like we had never seen anything like that towards the guy that put wrestling on the map on a national level. The biggest hero ever was getting just, so it was the perfect reaction. But there was that, like, when he dropped the leg, there was that half a second when you're like, what fucking way is this going to go? Are they going to shit on him, as in get off my TV shit on him? Or are they going to, oh, fuck, yep, they're going to fucking riot. Like, and it was that craziness. And instantly, WCW and NWO was heads and shoulders above WWF. Instantly. It was a reality-based feud. It was Scott Hall and Kevin Nash coming in their real names, talking about, we have a mole, we have someone on the inside, we're going to rip wrestling apart from the inside out, we're coming here and invading you. And that was a very real kind of, when our country's at war, someone's invading us, right? Or they're attempting to. So we go and defend our honor. Someone's invading WCW. That's a very like intrusive kind of feeling. And so when you realize that, oh my God, the guy that you hired in '94 to save this company has actually been the guy the whole time that's been waiting to tear it down. What a genius fucking concept.
In hindsight,
yeah,
right?
God, like, wow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think people don't understand that. I think that Hogan's career could have stopped at this moment.
Absolutely.
But it increased it by a decade.
Jesus, like,
because of this turn.
He helped give Scott Hall and Nash were the cool guys, but Hulk was the legend that had to jump on it and make it work. If Sting would have turned heel, or they would have brought anybody else in to do it, it would have been a cool angle. It really would have been, but I don't think it would have been what it was with Hulk.
As impactful.
Yeah, to have an invasion angle and then say, we have someone that's like our third guy that's like going to come in and really show you that we're fucking going to we're taking you down from the inside out. You had no idea the whole time. And then it was Hulk. You're like, oh my God. So even people that were angry with Hulk, as in like, boo, you're fucking boring, yellow and red.
Here's the obvious comparison, right? When you bring NWO into WWE, yeah, it's big. But was it this big? No. because that's the obvious, like, well, this is already an established heel brand. We're going to bring it in for turnover, and then we're going to beat the shit out of it. When NWO came in, you're like, well, who's going to take on Hulk with all these people around him? Who's going to do that? And that was the weekly thing. Like, damn, I don't see how this is going to end. And that is why Jess and Cuz people tuned in every week, because there was no answer. You got Mysterio getting thrown as a fucking lawn dart into a goddamn trailer.
Fucking great.
And it was fine. It was just regular fucking programming. Yeah.
And yeah, Bischoff was behind all this in the sense of he did have a, creative help in Kevin Sullivan and stuff to push the angle. But Bischoff really had to, his production values, like we were talking about, push the company to this level. And Bischoff had to really get into it, taking the powerbomb. He was in on it. And Dave, he got to a point where he kind of revolutionized. We always think of Mr. McMahon as the first character that kind of was like the owner that sort of jumped in there. Not true. Bischoff in December of 96 decided that I'm going to go from a regular ring announcer to revealing that I'm the executive vice president / president of WCW, and I'm going to become an on-screen character. And he did that.
And not to mention the fact that I am the creator of the NWO.
Yeah. And he did that on an episode of Nitro. I want to say it was like December of 96. It was before or right after Starrcade. And the whole angle was Piper was trying to get a rematch with Hulk. I want to say that was it. I might be fuzzy, but... And so he's been trying to get hold of Eric Bischoff. So Piper comes down, or Bischoff gets in the ring, on an episode of Nitro. And he's like, hey, Piper's not going to be here tonight, but like, I can't get a hold of the guy. I'm trying to get a hold of him. I'm trying to get him a title match with Hulk. He's not calling me back, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, Piper's music hits. So Bischoff looks like he's shitting his pants. Now, up to this point, Bischoff was just the announcer on hour 1 or hour 2 of Nitro. And and so he kind of has like a, oh shit, like look on his face. Piper comes down and gets in the ring. He's like, you look surprised. And he's just like, what are you doing here? And he's like, you come out here and you say that you've been trying to get a hold of me all week and you're trying so hard to get me that contract and get me a title match with Hulk. And I don't understand. You keep saying that
what's my number?
Yeah, you went to my house. You did all this. None of that's true. You said you went to my house. I did. You weren't home. What's my gate look like? What's the beginning to my ranch look like? What's my street number? What does my house look like? And Bischoff was like stammering. He's like, you know what? That's right. When did you call me? What number did you call? He's like, you're a liar. You're a liar, and you're the guy that's been the mole the whole time. And right when he said that, all of the NWO rushed in the ring and they grabbed Piper and they held his arms back or whatever. And then you see Bischoff's face geniusly change from this announcer to this evil look. And then Hulk looked at him, he gets on the mic, he's like, now everybody knows who everyone else is working for. And you realize, like, holy shit, like this guy. And then Hulk announced him as like, he was the president and he's the guy that's been pulling the strings the whole time. He's the guy that allowed me to turn and re-sign my contract and come in here. He allowed Hall and Nash to come in here.
Now that everybody realizes who everybody's working for, my God, this guy here was the foundation of the WCW. Now he works for the NWO. I'll tell you what.
So basically, you're led to believe that Bischoff took that powerbomb as like a sacrificial kind of like initiation into the NWO, and you were like, oh my God, like this guy is pure evil. And from that moment on, the Eric Bischoff character was a great fucking. He had more heel heat than most people on the roster. Eric Bischoff did, like in a good way, like. And this is way before the Mr. McMahon character as well. Yeah.
No, of course. We still haven't even gotten to that Mr. McMahon character because that's a reaction to the situation. Because as this angle grows more complex, this takes us into a margin of 83 weeks. The title of Eric Bischoff's podcast, right? Yep. And it's pretty simple. Eric beat Vince for 83 consecutive weeks with this program. Simple as it is, right? It sounds easy now, but it wasn't easy when you start to think about, well, how am I going to overtake? And then at the same time, on the other side, Vince is like, well, no one's going to beat me. And this causes a major reaction, right? So Bischoff takes over for 83 weeks and he moves over from the commentator role to the manager role. And he's dubbed Eazy-E and all that bullshit. And he's a dictator and he's the NWO boss. He controls everything. And he basically gets to the point where, he was even supposed to hire DiBiase as a spokesperson and the backer of NWO, but when it got as big as it was, he wanted to be that guy. So you didn't even think about it. Bishop was like, no, this is my baby. I'm going to be the head of this, right? And, there was a lot of mainstream exposure. He appeared on HBO, Tonight Show, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, from the history we see, quite frankly, Vince always takes over.
Yeah, and
that's the downfall of WCW going in.
Yeah, 97 was all WCW, and then they broke records in 97 with bringing Rodman in. That set pay-per-view records, and like that mainstream media was all over them. Sure. WCW cannot be understated. They were the mainstream company in 97 for sure. Like, I mean, they were just all over the news. They were on the cover of TV Guide. They were on everything. It was not Vince. It was Eric and WCW. And you got to give him props, man. But unfortunately, he didn't have an end game for the NWO. He didn't have an end game. WCW had to win. And I don't think Bischoff really wanted to get off that train. It got to a point where he started to get burnout. Mergers happened. And I didn't do a lot of research on this, but like, AOL and Time Warner merged, and I think AOL or like Turner Productions merged with Time Warner, and like they merged, and then Time Warner merged with AOL. As that was happening in 97/98, they started putting a lot of restrictions on Bischoff, and the guy that was always in Bischoff's corner, Ted Turner, was reduced to nothing. Just a guy that was going to collect a bunch of profit and a bunch of shares from stock and all that, because he sold the company twice. And so he was going to be more than a rich man than he already was. But like he was going to be removed from power. So before Bischoff knows it, he's put in a corner and he has no power. Now he has no allies. Now these executives that hate wrestling and know nothing about wrestling from AOL, Time Warner, are bearing down on him and trying to edit his product and trying to fuck with him and trying to say this and trying to say that. And that really started fucking with him at the end of 97, beginning of 98, so much to where they didn't do themselves any favor. They fucked the Sting angle up. The Sting angle was the biggest deal ever. And I don't want to focus on that because that's more of a Sting show. But I mean, like the Sting buildup in 97 to face Hulk and beat him at Starrcade was the key. And they fucked that up. They get lucky. They get a guy named Bill Goldberg. And they find a way to fuck that up at the end of 98. And so Bischoff by the end of 98 was so burnt out, not just from the ride, from being an on-screen talent and also behind the screen executive, which will burn anybody out, right? You can't do both. And now he has these executives being like, what are you doing here? What are you doing there? Why are you doing that? How come you're doing that? Even though he's profiting, WCW in 96, 97, 98 made so much fucking money. But yet they were all over him, because you had all these executives that just are pencil pushers and they have to justify their job and they have to nitpick and nitpick. So Bischoff's getting beaten down over the next 2 years. And finally, it becomes the end of 98. Bischoff's pretty much done. Like he's just fried. And they beat Bill Goldberg. And they do the finger poke of doom at the beginning. I'm fast forwarding because I know we've run long. And they do the finger poke of doom at the beginning of 99, and Bischoff is done creatively. Like he's fizzed out, he's fucked up.
And there's another side of that too, right? We get into that to where the WWF decides to maybe we should respond.
True.
And there's a couple of ways they respond. I would say 3 big ones. How about Stone Cold?
Well, yeah.
How about Mick Foley?
And
how about The Rock?
And Mr. McMahon, right? Too.
And that's 4.
So yeah, by the end of Dave's right. By the end of 97, they're heating up. And even though they don't win their first ratings until April of 98, right after WrestleMania.
They're 14, chasing the entire time.
They're getting close. And then they finally overtake Bischoff in the ratings, which I skipped over. They finally beat Bischoff in the ratings in April of 98. I believe it was. It was shortly after Mania 14 when Stone Cold won the title. And then they were trading back and forth, and 98 was pretty competitive, but WWF clearly had the creative edge, and Foley was over. Stone Cold was massive. Bischoff was Mr. McMahon, the character, was massive. So they were over.
Rock was
now
massive.
You have both promotions setting cable records everywhere. I mean, wrestling was on fire, taking the world by storm. But really looking back, WCW starts to decline a little bit at the end of 98. They're just sort of getting soft. Vince is fucking hammering shit home. Jerry Springer television, let's do it. But Bischoff's being handcuffed by AOL Time Warner. What are you doing here? What are you doing there? Vince owned the company. That was always the key. Always the key. Bischoff was just a cog in the wheel. And when Turner sold it to somebody else and they sold it to somebody else, it gets watered down. Vince always had final say. So,
and when you think about it in hindsight, this is where Nash, gets the booking rights.
In like March or April of 99, he gets the booking rights, and he just they were losing momentum anyway because Bischoff was so burnt out. He's like, I need somebody else to take creative. So he gave it to Kevin Nash, of all people. I want to say like March or April of 99. And so Bischoff so I could focus back again on production and this and that and the other. And Bischoff was just done and burnt out by that time. And Nash in the beginning of 99 just fucked creative. There's a famous episode of Nitro where Nitro at this point had gone to 3 hours, by the way. Isn't that familiar? Isn't that haunting how Raw is 3 hours now and it's awful? So Bischoff put Nitro to 3 hours and it started tanking and being awful because it's too fucking long. And they did this thing. Nash's first episode as Booker, the first hour was all vignettes and taped interviews. They didn't have one live wrestling match until hour 2. That the ratings tanked so bad at that point that people were freaking out. Nash was Booker for like 5 months too. He fucked that company so bad. Now, in his defense, Dave's mentioned this to me before, that Nash agreed later, I had no business being in there. But you know what? I when the announcement was first made, my first thought was, Nash has no business being there. Like, what the fuck are you doing? He was so burnt by this point, Bischoff was, that he's like, you take the reins, so much to the fact that it fell off the wheels so bad by the summer of 99 that they fired or suspended Bischoff indefinitely.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's where the replacement comes in, right?
And WWE's beating them like a drum every week, by the way, in 99. Every week.
Yeah. At this point, the president of WCW title was eliminated. He was replaced by Harvey Schuyler, of all people. Who the fuck is that? I don't know.
Who decided to bring in a shitty Vince Russo and Ed Fiera from WWF and made it even worse. They made it even worse.
Just trying to buy people, basically.
Yeah, they made it even worse. It was bad.
And not even, it was less than a year, a little over 6 months later. It got so bad that they brought Bischoff back to be an on-air
in 2000, in spring of 2000. Yeah,
April of 2000. And he worked on writing shows with Russo, and it just didn't work, right? And you have all the issues, the crazy shit with Flair and the comebacks and all that stuff, and holy crap, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, we had an attempted buyout and just failure completely of WCW. I mean, this is where it goes. It gets so bad that they went from a $50 million company to a company that was just losing. By
the end of 99, they lost millions upon millions. This guy who won a bet in 95 and he finally turned a profit and had an executive get on his knee and give him $1, was reduced to, at the end of 99, losing millions of dollars and being suspended indefinitely. And it's so crazy. This whole, I know it's been done a million times and talked about a million times, but the Monday Night Wars and the rise and fall of WCW is such an interesting, amazing thing. It will always polarize me to this day. I am so amazed and interested in that time period where it's like, how can a company go from that height? And it's a combination of a lot of stuff. It's a combination of Bischoff's not having experience to run the long race like Vince knew how to do. and the mergers killed Bischoff. And I know people don't want to give Bischoff that excuse, but I believe Bischoff on that. I can understand how
he had no control.
Dude, corporate pressure is pretty immense when you think anyone who's been in a corporate that is sold while you've been employed there, and then all of a sudden it's a different environment and they put the fucking pressure on and they just choke the life out of people. And it is I can't describe to you how brutal that is. Topped with the fact that
at the end of the day, Jess, I mean, Vince owned his federation.
Right,
Bischoff
right.
didn't.
That's always been the key, right? Like, and on top of that, yeah, you have Vince putting pressure on the other side. He's coming alive. Stone Cold hits huge. You know, DX hits huge. The character McMahon hits huge. Like, so all that, and you have all that going on.
Foley.
Yeah, you have simultaneously that pressure with the merger killing you. And that did Bischoff in. And the fact he never owned the company outright. That killed him.
Yeah.
That killed him. And at the end of he got brought back, like Dave said, in 2000, and it never worked with him and Russo. Russo finished out the year as creative, and it was all a clusterfuck because Russo's a piece of shit and a garbage. Like, you know, you talk about a guy who fucking...
Bro.
You know, people accuse Bischoff of just living off his WWE legacy. He did a lot. We covered a lot right now. Bischoff did a lot. Russo did nothing. He did nothing. He was an important part of the Attitude Era. He worked in with the system they had there at the time. But when he got on his own, Russo proved that he was garbage and he had no fucking wrestling knowledge. He didn't have a creative bone in his body. He was guided by Vince and Pat Patrick and those other guys. And he was just fucking awful. And, you know, he, to this day, still has a podcast, but he quits a carrier of podcast every 6 months because, you know, they did him wrong. Russo is a fucking piece of shit, and he makes excuses every time for his failures, but his failures are his own. And he's a fucking.
I just want to put it out there. I will accept all podcasts that want to, you know, adhere to the O.W.P. Just, you know, we're down.
Yeah, Bishop.
When you want to accept us.
Russo's shitty, and like, yeah, he's a piece of shit, and so like, but Bischoff at the same time, I will admit, he was not the complete package. He wasn't very great at creative. I mean, he was a good producer. He got one good idea and he rode that shit. He made that shit make history. I'm not shitting on Bischoff, but like he was not.
And he'll admit that he was.
He
not
says
the
it every
one
week. I was not a very creative kind of guy. I needed somebody.
Yeah.
So Russo was not the guy to be the creative guy. So it failed. And Rusev. It failed, and in 2001, WCW lost their television contract, and Vince McMahon bought the library for $3.5 million.
Yeah, that's insane. Because Bischoff,
the height
Bischoff
that they reached, the NWO changed America, changed the wrestling landscape, was mainstream, everything. That whole history, and Vince bought for $3.5 million.
Absolutely insane, because you said $3.5 million over a company that was producing $50 million here at one point. Bischoff even said, "Well, if you are not interested in the WCW brand, let me buy it."
Yeah, what happened right before
when they realized that you know Time Warner was not going to renew contracts for TV rights. It was worthless.
Yeah, he communicated with Bill Bush.
Literally bought that library for $3.5 million.
Bischoff communicated with Bill Bush, and finally, Bischoff promoted it like a year before. I want to buy WCW. No.
Yeah.
And then when finally he came to him and said, "Hey, how serious are you?" And Bischoff's like a heart attack. "I will buy WCW off you." This is when they still had the deal on TNT. And
he got investors and everything.
Yeah, he got investors. They agreed. Everything else, the sale was going to go through. Bischoff went on vacation. And while he was on vacation, TNT decided we do not want wrestling on our telecast anymore. And we do not want this money bleeder, WCW, on our television studios anymore. So we're done with it. So they canceled Monday Nitro. So when Bischoff came back, he got a message from his lawyer / investor / whatever that said the deal is dead. They canceled it on TV. And Bischoff's like, well, it's not worth buying, which we look back now and I'm like,
it's not.
It was worth.
He was right.
It was worth at the time, but without the TV deal at the time in 2001, without the TV deal, yes, I get why he made that decision. So Vince swooped in and bought the library for 3.5, and it was pretty much probably the catalyst that launched the network today.
Oh, for sure.
That's the foundation of the network, Jess.
But at the time, Bischoff didn't think like, oh yeah, I should just fork out $3.5 million and buy the library. He could have sold it again to Vince 4 years later.
He could have bought the library and sold it to Vince for 10 times.
For 10 times, yeah, for $20 million, and Vince would have bought it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
he would have.
But nobody knew. Nobody knew. It's a crazy fucking story. This whole ending is so fucking
crazy.
nuts. But like, I don't want to lose track of Bischoff, but like, I want to do this episode because I really am a fan of his in the sense that like, he did inspire the change in the mid-90s. He really did. And if you don't agree with that, you don't get wrestling and you don't understand the history. You don't. Like, he did a lot of stuff. You
they weren't born when all that was going on.
I think to briefly understand, and I don't want to get too much into the TNA nonsense and Eric
You're right. Yeah, that was a
on
disaster.
WWE. But here's the thing. You have to understand what Vince did. In order to understand what Bischoff did, you have to understand what Vince did. Vince killed territories entirely. He changed wrestling forever.
For good or bad.
And for good or bad, he took wrestling to a Saturday, Sunday phenomenon, and we loved it and we grew on it and we saw it on national network affiliates. And in process, he killed just about everything out there, with the exception of, oh wow, this little Crockett promotion over here that happened to survive in the South. And Bischoff grabbed a little piece of that and once again turned wrestling on its face. He completely changed the dynamic of wrestling by utilizing what Vince was trying to get to, but hadn't quite gotten there yet, and saying, house shows aren't important. TV rights are, TV ratings are, and that's how I'm going to get my money, through commercials and everything else. And Vince hadn't even gotten there yet, and Bischoff just took this leapfrog over him, and Vince almost failed. He almost stammered. He was almost done. And you have to give Vince credit to be able to recover, and Eric Bischoff couldn't stand the long haul, right? This is basically what it's about. Bischoff took this TV knowledge and said, hey, Vince, fuck you on this leapfrog over, and gave him the big fucking middle finger. And Vince is like, okay, well, guess what? I'm not dead yet, so I'm going to learn and I'm going to respond. And we had this great era of, I want to say 3 to 5 years, how you want to look at it, depending on ratings, falling, raising, whatever, you'll never get it back. It'll never be the same. You guys want to talk about AEW? Fuck you. TNA's fucking, putting up numbers against it. And by the way, Vince's C brand is taking half the market on that. It's not a war. It's not the same. Jess talked about this in his solo episode. It's not a war. It's not even close right now.
And it all stemmed from not just the vision of Bischoff, but like when they first debuted in 95 against Raw, Nitro did. It would have told the story if they would have split the audience, but they didn't. WCW was a national company before that. Not as big as WWE or WWF, but like WCW/NWA/ whatever was Georgia wrestling was all inbred in the South and the East Coast. And it had a huge following that people still followed. No matter how bad the ratings dipped, WCW they were a national company. TBS was on cable. So people saw it all across the nation. So it was a national brand, not as big, not what we think WWF was. We think national brand, we think Vince WWF, but it was a national brand to a certain extent. So when it debuted against Monday Night Raw, it was on cable live, and it brought new people to wrestling.
Yeah,
and not new people but it brought its own audience over.
Casual.
Whereas right now, AWE and NXT are splitting the audience very clearly because there's no casuals watching anymore. And so back here, even though wrestling was at a down period in 95, there were still some casuals left, but there were very clear people. I only watch WCW. I hate WWF. And that was even when WWF was good, I hate Hulk. I love Flair. It was stemming from that. And it just progressed, and Bischoff took that little kind of nugget, that seed, and planted it
and set it on fire,
and then brought it to the mainstream and the current product at the time. And he got new fans and college students and all that. Like it was an amazing time that if you didn't live through it, I'm sorry you didn't. And I know you can't help when you were born, but I'm sorry you didn't live through that because it was fucking amazing. Not if you go back and watch some of the episodes, you look back at some of the episodes and you're like, oh, that wasn't so great. But the competitiveness, you felt it. You fucking felt him reading the results. You felt Hulk turning. You felt Austin.
It was like,
bigger.
Holy dog
Austin
shit.
got bigger because pressure was on the company. Mr. Moran character developed because pressure was on the company from WCW on the other side. It was all competition always breeds the best in companies. Always, always, always. And this was the biggest example of that. And we'll never see it. I don't know if we'll ever see it again. I really don't. I hate to say that. I don't think we will. We're going to see these fucking YouTube promotions like NWA Power, which I love, and AWE and NXT, and they're going to split the audience into halves, into thirds, into quarters, into eighths, into 32s. They're going to keep splitting and splitting.
Hey, Brian Alvarez, what was the ratings for AEW and our bullshit?
Both shows are below 1 million. So, but the World Series, the World Series,
that's true. That's a good.
No,
I don't give a fuck.
The World Series and the NBA debuted. Okay.
Hey, by the way,
we talked about it before. Hey, cuz, what were they not setting rating records during NFL season?
Yes.
On Monday nights
they were.
Okay,
for sure.
So it doesn't fucking matter if the World Series is on or the NWA
no, it's
or
not
NBA.
To justify. It's not to say that.
So if your product is hot,
and
and you're not bringing new people in, you're going to split the audience into halves, into quarters, into eighths, and that is not good for wrestling. If your excuse is, but it was good considering the World Series, well, I'll tell you right now, when the Monday Night Wars were going on, the sponsors from the NFL were going to Vince and Bischoff and being like, how can we buy spots in your shows? Because we're making good money on the NFL on Monday night, but we also want to, you guys are also pulling in. Between the two shows, they were doing 8 to 10 million viewers every fucking week, even when Monday Night Football was going on. So it didn't matter. Advertisers were like, how can we throw money your way? That's not happening now. Advertisers are not like, hey, you guys are both below $1 million. Pepsi. You got
what? You got fucking AEW, and you've got NXT, and I think it was under 700,000 for NXT, and you got under 1 million for AEW this week.
But the excuse, Dave, was
it's
World Series.
It's not.
No, Dave, it's the World Series. We have an excuse.
Yes, it's but I know you're trying.
Wrestling back in the day was not about excuses. It was about
it was a tenth of what they had back then.
Well, not even that. I'm not even comparing the numbers because people are cutting the cord nowadays. DVR, blah blah blah.
DVR
and cable produces better shows than network TV now. So it's a whole different thing. But the fact is that when the ratings drops, the first things people do, and I'm not saying the AEW or WWF release press, but everybody else that talks about ratings says, it's good considering that the World Series was on. That was never even talked about back then. Not even like news outlets or people who reported ratings back in the day said, well, football was on, so Ryan Nacho was down.
No,
it wasn't. Ryan Nacho was up, and they were setting records every week because the competition was fun, and they had major stars.
Crazy.
And they were creating new audience members, not splitting it. That's the difference. AEW was created literally from dirt a year ago, and it has no following, no history. No one, WCW, good or bad, at least had a history leading up to that war. NWA. That meant a lot, and people don't understand that. So it's not about the number. You're right. The number today would be smaller because of cord cutters and everything else. However, it just... every week there's an excuse. It's good, but the Monday Night Football game was the Bears against Seattle, and it got a 7 million rating. It doesn't fucking matter. They were said NFL was on fire back in the day, but every fucking Monday, Nitro and Raw they didn't beat the ratings of NFL because that was on network television. They didn't pummel the ratings. They pummeled the demographic, and advertisers were going from football going, hey, yeah, we're advertising on NFL. Well, how can we get a piece of your pie? You guys are fucking like making tons of money.
You can argue in some respect that the wrestling wars were the reason why Monday Night Football is no longer on network affiliate and it's on ESPN.
Well, it's on network too every week.
Well, it is.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Sunday.
Oh my God, Dave! On Sunday, Channel 4, Channel 11,
NBC,
Channel 2.
Yeah. NBC,
No, I'm talking about Monday.
Oh, Monday.
night.
You're right. No, you're right. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I apologize.
Oh.
I jumped down your throat.
Sunday is a totally different bag. Bro.
Normally, I would be justified in fucking trying to cut your throat, but you're right.
The only reason I bring
overreacted
up
on that.
the ratings in Texas is to show that it's under 1 million, that it's shitty. Like I don't fucking I know it's not good. It hasn't been good since.
And I'm not saying again, like even today's ratings, like I'm not saying compare the number to what it was, but like they're splitting the audience, which is not really a lot right now. So that's different. And I know we're getting way away from the Bischoff, but it kind of does
we're gonna
come back to Bischoff
after this.
Right. It's just, it's not the same. And people, if you didn't live through the Monday Night War, I know you cannot help when you were born, but Bischoff was a big part of that. And I know he played such a good dick character. We skipped over the fact that he came to WWE in 2002, and he was not part of creative, but he did an on-screen character. Eric Bischoff, general manager of Raw.
He's a great
He
character.
did great. Eric Bischoff is a great performer. And at the time, he caught lightning in a bottle and he stretched it out as long as he knew, as long as his experience would have allowed him to. So we're at almost an hour and a half at this point, so we can't drag on. No. But I mean, the whole episode is on Eric Bischoff. I respect him, and I know he got fired really quick, and he hasn't done anything. His TNA run was a disaster and everything else. But in all honesty, this period here, how can you not give him credit?
You have to.
For not only just doing shit behind the scenes leading up to the Monday Night Wars, but the Bischoff character on screen was before Mr. McMahon, and it was a great heel, and he was awesome. And the NWO run was great. Even though we did have other creative people help writing him to do the NWO angle, it didn't matter. Bischoff, not everybody was Vince who owned their own company, right? Bischoff he jumped the ladder, like Dave said earlier, super quick. He didn't just climb up one rung at a time. He jumped 19 rungs at a time. It was, I respect him. And I don't know what you guys feel about him, but I respect him greatly. And you can say what you want. He's a flash in the pan, whatever. But what a big flash in the pan. If you want to say he's a flash in the pan, what a big...
I mean, you can argue so many things when we wrap this up, but you can argue that Stone Cold wouldn't have had the career he had without Bischoff pushing the other brand, right? I mean, they were looking for something, and
I disagree
Stone Cold was trying to show them something.
What are you talking about? What do you disagree, cuz?
Oh, I thought you said the only reason Stone Cold became as big as he was is because Bischoff pushed him.
No.
Stone Cold had wanted
that.
to break out like that for a long, long time.
No. Stone Cold wanted to. What I'm saying is that they wouldn't have been looking unless they were getting their ass kicked, and they were forced to look down their path. And Stone Cold's like, "Hey, assholes, I'm right here." Right. So I mean, what I'm trying to say is that Stone Cold would have never gotten his break because the brass wouldn't have allowed it. Yeah, it's like right now there could have been somebody in the fold, a diamond in the rough in WWE that we never saw because there's nobody competing with Bischoff, him, right? And Bischoff, without Bischoff, there'd be no Stone Cold. That's a fact. Even though he fired him.
Yeah, if WWF didn't have a reason to be edgy, the NWO and the Scott Hall and Kevin Nash coming in as their real names and being kind of like reality based. The wrestling audience was tired of the plumbers and the Quang Ninjas and all that stuff, and they were looking for something new. Bischoff, whatever you want to say, he stumbled upon it, whatever. He wrote it, and it made sense. And throwing Hulk in there on top of that.
I even think he forced it. I don't even want to say stumbled.
Well, whatever.
He forced it.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying whatever, like either way. And he made a big part. Just his character, on screen played a big part in it. Hall and Nash turning Hulk heel. All that had to be a decision that was made at one point.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
You know what? Can I wrap up the Bischoff podcast? I got 2 good points.
Wrap it up, bitch.
We didn't talk about his WWE run, but I think we can bring up 2 points of the WWE run to end it. 2 great moments. I don't know about you guys, but I was watching it live when it happened, and I didn't really read the dirt sheets back then because this was like early 2000s, 2002, right? Bischoff coming back to WWE. To me, greatest moments was when Booker T and Sharmell, they were cutting a promo backstage. I don't remember what it was about. But Booker T's did, can you dig that, sucker? It was Coach interviewing him. And then he paused and he looks off camera like he's seeing a ghost. And then Bischoff shows up.
So good to see you again, my friend.
Tell me I didn't
I was fucking shocked.
Yeah, that was right
Great-
before. Yeah, he
great
walked out
moment.
live on the stage. Yeah,
Great moment. And then, you guys brought it off air when Vince introduced him on stage, and that was a big moment too. So those two moments, I think, man, those are some of the biggest moments in wrestling in general.
But he played his character well. You know, and
Exactly.
again, I'm not trying to drag this episode on, but he played the character really well. So
Yeah,
to me,
it's a big difference from Vince going, "Hey, let's take some of the nostalgia from the past and let's bring you on as a character."
I'm the Eddie
I mean,
Bravo of
Bischoff
this
had no
podcast.
control.
but not
at that
even that,
point.
like just the lead up to that, like the force that WWF was in the 80s and 90s was massive. And the failure that WCW was equally as massive on the other side of the scale.
Yeah.
Bischoff had to combat that, rise up to ground level, and then beat Vince McMahon, the Vince McMahon,
Overtake them,
for
yeah.
83 weeks. I mean, I don't think people really understand that. They love to call him a flash in the pan, and I don't understand why they do. If you really understood wrestling and thought about it for a second, this motherfucker had to do what no one did before on the national level, and that's beat Vince.
If you look at the small timeline, I understand why it's thought of as a flash in
Sure.
the pan. But I think that when Bischoff says I took a company that was bleeding $5 million a year and hemorrhaging and turned it into a $50 million profitable company, yeah, that's something to be talked about. And Bischoff did that. No one else did that. I don't know why it's so hard to understand. Oh, it's a flash in the pan. Yeah, you might consider that, but he was literally David versus Goliath, and he won. He won for a while, and it forced Vince to change everything he knew about wrestling and to get back on top. I don't know how you can argue any of that. I just, it's quite incredible.
it really is.
So
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Wrap it up, bud.
I mean,
yeah, with that, as always, you can reach us via Instagram at O.W.P 2019, SoundCloud at Our Wrestling Podcast, YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel, or just do the easy thing, download WrestlePost at no charge to you and join us along with other great podcasts of today. This is Dave along with Jess and Cuz O.W.P saying, have a good one.